Have you ever been driving on a cold winter morning and seen an entire dead deer on the side of the road? Maybe you've even been hunting and you haven't got anything. If you've thought about picking it up to harvest some meat, you're not alone. That's what we're going to talk about today. Roadkill. Do you take it or leave it? Hey everybody, Samuel Allred here. Welcome back to the Persistence Outdoors podcast. We're going to talk about roadkill today. It's not hunting exactly, but if you're a hunter, it's not unlikely that picking up some street meats has crossed your mind. Before we get into it, if you've enjoyed the podcast, if you've learned something, please give me a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening on. Follow the show so you get notifications when a new episode comes out, and tell a friend. These things are not only nice for me, but they also help other people discover the show, and ultimately, it will help more people learn about and adopt the hunting lifestyle. So with that, let's get into it. The topic of roadkill didn't just come out of the blue. I recently salvaged some roadkill. It was a dead doe, and it turned out pretty well, and so it got me thinking about how many other people out there might be interested in salvaging roadkill, or at least have thought about it. So this is how it went down. I was actually out hunting. I was driving to a new place for my evening hunt. I was hunting white-tailed deer. And as I'm driving into my spot, it is cold and rainy. And on the side of the road, I see a white-tailed doe, completely dead on the side of the road. It looked like someone had dragged it off to the side of the road. Well, I looked at it and it looked fresh. And when I say that, it didn't look dirty. It didn't really look like it had been laying there for a long time. There was no decomposition. Its eyes looked glassy, and there was some blood around it that still looked very red. Granted, it was raining, but it just looked fresh. And I thought, man, there's a whole entire white-tailed deer right there. I am hunting white-tailed deer. I want the meat, and I have all the tools I need to make that happen. So first, I went and parked by the deer and got out and felt it, inspected it a little bit closer. I wanted to make sure that there was salvageable meat on the animal and that it wasn't completely mushed. So I went up, felt it. It looked like the back end had been hit pretty bad, but the front end of the animal, about halfway, the rib cage, the front quarters, the neck, all of that seemed in pretty good shape. At that point, I realized I didn't know what the salvage laws in Idaho were. So I had to drive out to a place where I could get some cell reception and look it up on my phone and make sure that it would be legal for me to pick up the animal and salvage the meat. I was a little bit worried because I was out hunting, so I was dressed as a hunter. I had guns in my car. If someone came along and saw me with an untagged animal, it could lead to some questions. So I just wanted to make sure everything was above board. I actually gave Fish and Game a call. It was a holiday, so they didn't pick up, but I was able to find the directions on their website. It looks like I could pick up the animal, and I just needed to report it and get a salvage permit. Report within 24 hours and then get a salvage permit within 72 hours. So I actually reported it right then and there on my phone, and then I went back and picked up the animal and put it in the back of my SUV. I live in an apartment, so instead of heading home, I continued driving out to the public land that I was originally headed to. The deer did not smell that great. To be honest, in my car, it didn't smell all that good, and I was a little bit worried at that point because smell is one big indicator of whether an animal is bad or not. But I figured I'd take it out, I would check it and just cut into it and see what it all looked like and what it all smelled like. So I got to the public land and I got the deer out of my SUV onto the ground. I dragged it a little way so I wasn't just gutting it in the parking area. And I actually decided not to gut it because there was so much damage on the hindquarters and the guts were spilling out a little bit on the back of the deer. So I decided I wasn't going to touch that. I wasn't even going to get near it. And I used something of a modified gutless method. I wasn't sure how long the deer had been laying there. It was somewhat stiff at this point, although it was still warm. So I decided to go for the meat that I wanted the most first, get it out, get it cooling off, and I wasn't going to worry about anything that I couldn't save. So first I went for the back straps. That's what I wanted the most. I just cut along the spine of the animal to get the hide off, started peeling that away and cut out the back straps. Towards the back end of the animal, the back straps had been hit or there were some guts on them. So I didn't go too far back. I didn't get an entire back strap, but I still did get a decent amount of backstrap meat. Forward of the rib cage, everything looked good. So I kept skinning away and I pulled off the 2 front quarters. As I was cutting, I was looking for signs of spoilage, and it pretty much looked normal to me. It smelled fine. The meat that I pulled off smelled fine. So I felt pretty confident that it would be okay to eat. After that, I hung the meat in a tree and went hunting. I didn't kill anything that night, so I came back home, and as soon as I got home, I cleaned up the meat a little and put it in the refrigerator. So the big question is, did it taste good? And I can tell you it did. The back straps tasted just like delicious deer steak. My wife even ate some of it, and she thought it was good. She didn't have a problem with it. Honestly, it tasted great. I wouldn't have known it came from a roadkill deer. Today, I ate some of the shoulder in a pot roast. The shoulder had just the slightest taste of gaminess. And I'm saying just the slightest. It's kind of like when you breathe out, you get a little taste of something. It was like the LaCroix of gaminess. Like you wouldn't know it was there if you weren't paying attention. So completely edible, and overall, I thought the results were really good. That's my roadkill story. I would 100% do it again. There are moose, there are elk, there are deer around here. I'm not saying I'm going to go hit something with my car, but with a little diligence, you could have meat all winter, and that would be pretty great. That speaks to why you would gather roadkill in the first place. Maybe you want to feed your family. Maybe you want to use the animal for a better purpose, not let it go to waste, per se. Maybe you just want to help clean up and prevent a mess. All of those are good reasons to pick up some roadkill. So let's get into how to judge roadkill for human consumption. I've got to give a huge disclaimer here. Make sure you're being safe as you gather roadkill. Use your judgment and make sure it's legal in your area. Okay, with that out of the way, the first question is, did you see it killed? If you saw the animal killed, you know when it died and you know the nature of the accident. And likely if you see the animal killed, you will know right away if you can salvage it or not. If you didn't see the animal killed, it doesn't mean that you can't salvage it. It just introduces a lot of mystery about how long it's been laying there and whether the meat is spoiling by now or not. So if you see it killed, you're probably safe to salvage it, assuming that the damage isn't too great. So your next step is to go up and survey the damage. You want to make sure that there's actually salvageable meat left on the animal. When an animal gets hit by a big truck, a lot of that meat is going to be bruised. It could be bloodshot. The guts and the viscera could be busted open and spread over the animal. On the deer that I salvaged, some of the guts had come out and gone up and under the hide where the hindquarters were, it was probably because they bloated and the pressure caused them to come out. But there's all sorts of things that can happen with a major impact trauma like that. So you just need to go up and see if there's actually salvageable meat on the animal. If it's been run over, if it's been hit really bad, there may not be any salvageable meat on it. And at that point, there's not really any point in picking it up. You also want to consider the ambient temperatures. If it's super hot outside, say it's 75 degrees, the animal could spoil very quickly. So if you didn't see it killed and it's in warm weather, it's likely not going to be safe for consumption just because it can spoil so quickly and it's not going to cool down at all. If I were driving by a deer in 80-degree weather, I probably wouldn't stop unless I had just seen it killed, because there's just a likelihood that it's not going to be edible. On the other hand, if you have much lower temperatures, say below freezing or even up to 40 degrees, that 33 to 40 degree range is kind of your normal refrigeration temperatures, then the animal could last a lot longer. The deer that I salvaged had been laying there for a while because it was in rigor, but the temperatures were in that 35 to 40 degree range. So I knew it had some more time before the meat was really going to spoil. Think about what the temperatures are. If it's a cold morning, the animal could have laid for quite a long time, but as long as those temperatures are cooling it down, it could be okay, and it might be worth checking out. The next thing to check are the animal's eyes. Ravens and vultures and other animals often go for the eyes first. So if the animal has eyes that are pecked out, it's probably been a while and those scavengers have found the animal already. And it might be a good indicator that it's been there for too long. On the other hand, if the eyes are bright and not pecked out, and it looks like the animal just died, those glassy eyes can be a good indicator that the animal is still fresh. Next, you can check for rigor. If the animal's gone into rigor mortis, it means that it has been laying there for a while. For medium-sized game, it seems to be about 3 to 4 hours where it goes into rigor mortis. And it can be less, it can be more, but that seems to be about right. In my experience, it seems like smaller game goes into rigor faster, so it may be less time for smaller game. It's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it just gives you an idea of how long it's been there. The animal that I harvested was in rigor mortis, but when I cut into it, it still seemed like the meat was good. So if it's in rigor, you know that it's been there for at least a couple hours, and it's a good indicator. Again, if the temperatures are high and it's in rigor, you might decide to leave that animal or just move it off the road and pass it up. When you're feeling the animal for rigor, you might also want to feel around on the different muscle groups that you want to salvage. You can feel the back straps, you can feel the front and back quarters, and just make sure that they still feel firm and that they're not excessively squishy. If they're squishy, it means that they've been damaged by the impact and they might not make good eating, or they may have spoiled. You can also feel for bloating. If the animal's been laying there for a while, especially if it's warm, the guts are going to start building up some pressure and bloating, and that can, again, just be another indicator of whether the animal's good or not. Now, all of these are good indicators, but I think the most important indicator of freshness is smell. Our sense of smell does a pretty good job of telling us whether something's good to eat or not. If you've ever smelled bad meat or bad eggs, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If the animal smells excessively bad, that's a pretty good indicator that it's not good to eat. You will know if the animal smells that bad. Now, the animal could have some off smells just from laying there. It could have sort of the normal barnyard smell, but maybe it's wet. Or maybe part of the animal has been busted, but the rest of the animal is okay, like my deer. So there could be some funky smells, but once you get into it, once you cut into the meat smells okay. So you'll have to use your judgment. If it smells really bad, don't take it. But if it smells a little bit, you could still check the meat and see if the meat itself smells. On my animal, again, there were some overall smells, but it wasn't overwhelming. And when I cut into the meat, I pulled the meat out, I inspected it. It smelled just like meat should smell, which really isn't much of a smell at all. If you've decided the animal is worth salvaging, what do you do next? Well, make sure that you are complying with local laws. There's different laws from state to state, and you need to know exactly what's required of you when salvaging an animal. You could get charged with illegal possession of wildlife, which is bad news. And also, it's good to follow the reporting practices in your state because sometimes state game agencies use people who are salvaging animals, use their reports to gain more data for their studies and learn more about where animals are being hit and how many, etc. It helps if you have the right tools with you. So hopefully in your car you have a knife. Game bags are really nice, although you could get away with just a tarp or some plastic, and even some paracord if you need to hang it up somewhere. Then you have to decide where you are actually going to cut into it. I would recommend that you bring it somewhere that's not just on the side of the road. If you're just on the side of the road or the highway, one, that could be very unsafe with people ripping past you. And two, it's kind of a bizarre spectacle for people watching or people driving and seeing you just cutting up an animal. So it's not that it's disrespectful as much as it might just be a good idea to take it somewhere else that's a little more private, not be distracting, and also not be distasteful for people. If you bring it back to somewhere where you can cut it up, you may then want to think about whether you actually want to gut it or use a gutless method. If the animal's been hit pretty hard in the guts, you might want to do a gutless method so that you're not having to deal with all of those ruptured organs and the mess of that. If the animal was hit in the head, you might be able to gut it and be just fine and do it just like you would an animal that you've hunted. Lastly, just err on the side of caution. I know it's funny to say because maybe picking up roadkill isn't erring on the side of caution in the first place, but if you have an animal and you are salvaging meat from it, it's unlikely that it was a clean kill. So just cut around the damage. Realize that you're not going to get all of the meat that you might get when you were hunting, and just be okay with that and make sure that you're not saving something that could make you sick. Well, that's about it. I hope this podcast has been interesting to you and maybe gives you a new perspective on all that fresh meat that you see lying next to the road this winter. What do you think? Will you pick up roadkill now? Feel free to drop a comment in the comment section on Spotify or send me an email at persistenceoutdoors2022@gmail.com with your take on roadkill. If it's a good take, maybe I will read it on the show. I'll leave you with a final thought. I wonder if I sound a little unhinged talking about eating roadkill. I'm not trying to be cavalier about it. Most people are so far removed from the process of harvesting meat that they would find the idea of salvaging roadkill disgusting. If you think about it though, finding a fresh, dead animal is something that would have been celebrated by our ancestors. This is just another way to make the most of our natural resources. and we shouldn't turn our nose up at it. But yeah, maybe don't make it for dinner when company is over. That's all for today. I'll catch you next week.